I think it is really important that we highlight the life of online remoting and how it impacts on your life and on you as a person. I think the main place to start would be, why on earth did you decide in the first place to engage with online remoting? And we've got three people here, Michelle and Setu and Marie, and I'm just going to mention their names so that they know and we don't start to talk everybody at the same time. So Marie, if you want to just tell us, why on earth did you start with online remoting?
Well, we've heard this word digital nomad, and being a digital nomad was definitely a dream of mine. What I'd not expected was that I would need to be at home in my home country in a very remote spot in the countryside for reasons that I could not have expected. So ultimately, the dream was to become a digital nomad, and that is becoming possible over time. But also, when times come up in your life and you need to be in one spot, and have the flexibility to still earn, that is what makes it great. So both of those motivated me.
Setu, for you?
I think what motivated me was my life circumstance. We had been living in East Africa for about 5 years and returned to Namibia. And I'm a construction engineer, and the construction industry in Namibia had completely crashed. So under normal circumstances, I would probably have 6 contracts simultaneously in a year. I was having one, like a residence, a small little thing. And I knew I needed to find some way to make a living. I actually taught during the lockdown. I taught online and physically. I decided to do something I thought I was good at. So I taught maths, physics, chemistry, and applied maths for 2 years. And at the end of those 2 years, I once again decided that I need to pivot. And I'm glad I taught online because it really prepared me for working online. I reached out to my network and found out where could I use my skills? And that's when I found out about Mariana and found out about Remotania. And then I did the 6-month course. And at the end of the 6-month course, it's actually 5 months into the 6-month course, I signed my first contract in Australia. And the question was, how has it changed me? Or what motivated me? Okay, so what motivated me was my life circumstance.
Okay. So it was literally your circumstances that changed you. And Michelle, for you?
I already live in a very remote rural area, and I was working online, but with a contract, and there was very little. It was the same thing every day, day after day, different students whose work I was editing. But I felt my brain was going to sleep. And then I resigned that position because I just couldn't tolerate the boredom, the sameness of every day. I was kind of getting up and thinking, oh, well, like I've got 7 papers to review, and, when am I going to do them, and when can I do something more exciting? And then I came across Remotania on YouTube. And I'd already resigned, and I'd kind of tried. I was busy developing a website, which I'm now getting together. Yeah, and I did the Remotania course, and I got my first contract, I think, within 3 months. Things couldn't be better. I was saying to my mother, I visited them on Saturday, and I just said, this is just perfect for me. I get to upskill my skills. I mean, I've done a positive psychology coaching course. I'm now doing a neuropsychology certification. Yeah, it's exciting because all the time my knowledge is expanding. I'm dealing with different clients. In the previous job, I had no actual contact with the students, whereas now I have direct contact with my clients, and the issues I notice in their work we can discuss and dialogue about, which is far superior to just putting a comment in a review.
Yeah. Michelle, while I have you, your initial expectations when you started with online remoting, were they all met, or how were they different, or what were they when you initially started? What did you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, at the time, I just wanted to make ends meet, you know, to be able to feed my horses, my chickens, my dogs, my cats, keep my property. You know, I don't enjoy living off debt, so I try to have a nil balance either way every month. And it has exceeded my expectations in terms of that.
Okay.
I'm no longer having to turn pennies over 6 times before I spend them. If something is required that is going to make my life easier in the long term, I can consider that and do it. I always thought I would struggle with the kind of communication part of digital, and in fact, I think I'm quite good at it.
You work with it.
And I even got a question on video on something called United Network News. I asked a question about whether all up the dimensions it's a food chain. And I got a very, very nice responsive answer. And for the first time in my life, I saw myself on video and I thought, well, that's actually not so bad.
Fantastic. Marie, for you, expectations, I'm pretty sure you want to respond to Michelle because that's your field, isn't it? This notion of putting yourself out there. But your expectations, your initial expectations, what were they and what happened to them? Are they still there? They all delivered, or how does it work for you?
Well, something that I really appreciate about the way that my online work unfolded with Remotania and with your guidance, Mariana, was that it became a much more of a reality. And reality has this interesting property that it's not always rainbows and unicorns. So I had kind of expected that I would just go off and live on a beach, on a beautiful secluded island with my laptop where there was going to be wonderful Wi-Fi on the sand. And I have since discovered a lot of these things don't work quite that way. But what I have found is that where the expectation was complete freedom, the reality is there is a lot of freedom, and with great freedom comes great responsibility. Yes, you can, as an online remoter, be free to do whatever you want to do, but there's always a price to pay. So it's possible to say that I'm going to take a whole week off, but it's my responsibility to plan for that so that I can get things done. I do think I had underestimated the level to which it's important to keep at least a finger on the pulse. But definitely the problems I have now are not problems I've expected, but they're much better problems than I had before I had the option of working online.
Cool. Well, you said to your initial expectations. I know you just wanted to make ends meet, but your initial expectations, what were they?
My initial expectation was to just get work. I mean, I'm open about the fact that I doubted it would work. I could not see how someone who does what I do could work online. I did not believe it until it happened.
Okay. And then what happened to you when you realized it's happening?
You know, I think, well, I'm married. So I think financially, I always told myself I will not go in with my whole foot, probably dip a toe in first. So I took smaller contracts, which needed maybe 25, 20, 30 hours a week. And I think it's been refreshing. A, the exchange rate works to your favor. And B, it's allowed me to really, really save. So I have a giant nest egg into which I can dip into whenever I need. So it's been beneficial from that point because I have what I normally spend, and then I have this extra income with which I can expand what I want to do. We travel a lot, so it opens up what I do when I travel. It opens up what I do even when I'm home. It's given me a lot of flexibility and I enjoy that. I am, however, at the point now where I do believe I need to have multiple streams. And Mariana's right with that. You can't just rely on one project. There have to be a few. So as everybody knows, I've got one contract currently in Jamaica, a renovation, and I'm being interviewed by a completely everyone in the company, a completely remote company. So everyone in the company is remote. I'm being interviewed for them. And then I'm looking into other options. And I've also challenged corporate Namibia to, if you need my services, embrace me as a consultant. I'm happy to be hybrid, but I prefer to be remote.
Mm.
And it's taken me 3 years, and 2 have now bitten me.
Mm. Fantastic. Fantastic. So there, I want you to do 2 things for the next one. And while I have you said to stay with me, look at how did online remoting surprise you, but then also in how did it surprise you in a positive way and surprise you in a negative way, because it's not all good. They, like Marie already mentioned, there's a price to pay to live this lifestyle. So how did it surprise you in a good way, and how did it surprise you in a bad way?
How it surprised me in a good way was I never knew what my brain was capable of processing and how fast it was able to do it. Oftentimes you apply for a job and you promise medium to good expectations, but then you know you need to highly deliver. You need to over deliver what you promised. And many times I've been given a small little contract where I was required to use a software I had never used before. And so it was a quick learning of that software, upskilling, and then delivering on time. And when you see that, hey, I can do it, I can actually face a challenge and overcome it and do it. That's been the most positive aspect for me. There's so many projects where I've been challenged to think completely like I've never thought before, to solve problems I have never seen before. My very first contract was an underwater museum in Australia and Perth. And you know, Australians are lovely people, but typical Australians thought South Africa was a continent. And I was like, well, your country is a continent, mine is not. But anyway, they told me about diving off the coast in Perth and what the seabed looked like. And I needed to build a foundation for a structure they were going to build in the sea. I have never, ever, ever done something like that, ever. And so I had to think of things like the water velocity. How deep is the sea? How do you make something move up if the tide of the sea is moving to the side? Things like that. And when you finally solve the problem, the sense of satisfaction is amazing. And I think that's been the biggest reward I've gotten from online remoting. A negative experience, and my fellow panelists know it well. I had a client in the US who was busy with renovations, remodels, refurbishments, that sort of thing. And I had certain design requirements that needed to be checked. I printed what I needed to check, and I worked in hard copy on my desk, ticking, okay, I've done that, tick on the drawing, etc., etc., etc. That checking process took about 3 to 5 days. Now, Upwork has an app where they take a picture of what you're doing every 20 to 30 minutes. So for that time period, what shows on the timer is not what I was doing. So in the end, the client queried it and said that I was padding my hours and asked to end my contract. A very negative experience, but it's really opened my eyes as to how to work when you're working remotely. I should have had a camera on that was recording me working, not working on my camera or not working on my computer, so that I could prove to my client that, hey, this is what I was doing. Because I could verbally tell them this is what I was doing, and I mean, I could show them the papers, but it was difficult to prove. So it was a big lesson about security and about risk and how to manage both.
And not to assume trust. Not to assume trust in the online world is really big. Marie, for you, how did it surprise you in a good way and in a bad way?
I think the surprise is the same thing, the good and the bad surprise. And there's a quote from Bill Gates from the 90s that actually explains that. Way back when it was still necessary to be a technology evangelist and technology had not reached as many people as it did today. He said, the first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. And this is why online remoting surprised me in a good way and a bad way, because things that go well, you add this online remoting factor and it's rocket fuel. That rocket can take off, or that rocket can blow up in your face. The biggest thing that can go right or can go wrong hinges around the connection that you have with the people that you're working with, whether it is a client relationship, whether you're working with a service provider or working with a team. The things that have been the most magnificent breakthroughs, projects that have amplified what any person in the teams that I've worked on online can do, have hinged around good, clear, honest, open, timely communication. And at the same time, and I think of myself as somebody who has taught myself to communicate well and effectively, and yet the times when things have gone so badly wrong has been when communication has either misfired or the greatest deadly sin of online remoting, going silent. When somebody goes silent online, that is the absolute kryptonite. So never being the one who goes silent and having strategies to bring back the person who's gone silent are really, really important. The damage that can be done is catastrophic. And having that timely communication, especially if things are going wrong, can make all the difference. So yes, the good is how technology or the online remoting magnifies our efficiency, but it can also really diminish it if things are going wrong.
For you, Michelle?
The positive things is I think I'm far more confident than I was when I started, and more willing to take risks. Yeah, I mean, right in the beginning, I had quite a difficult client, and it was a good lesson in terms of drawing boundaries and what I'm actually offering. I'm not offering myself as a psychologist, and that's what he needed. I'm offering myself as an editor. So I learned from that. In contrast, I suppose the work I do is a little different to Marie, is that sometimes I just let clients go. I don't really want to say more about that, but when the communication, because my jobs are quite finite. There's a job to do, I do the job, and then the contract ends. And some clients don't end the contract. And in that case, I will end the contract,
So you became a little bit
the
more
surprise
assertive?
to me also is that it worked.
A little bit more assertive?
Sorry?
A little bit more assertive?
Yes. Not a people pleaser anymore, and more clear about what I offer, and that if they want more than that, then it costs more hours, Whereas in the beginning, I would kind of do everything for nothing almost, in an effort to please. Whereas now I'm more certain of my value and more assertive about saying, if you want this, well,
you're touching on setting boundaries, setting good boundaries, and that's a point that Marie raised. Is the both of these, you doing stuff for free when you shouldn't, but also you say no to a client when you should say no. And let's talk about this thing, boundaries in the online world, because it's so easy to feel that it's just vast open space, but actually it isn't. If you don't, you set the boundaries, and that defines the life that you live online or not live online. Marie, do you want to start this notion of not having boundaries in terms of doing stuff for free, and also of not stepping away from things that don't work? Do you want to start that, because that's the subject that you put on the table?
Yes, and I definitely hear what Michelle is saying here as well, because some of this is when you get work in and you do a project for a client, and we all want to over deliver, but knowing how far is enough over delivery to include in the price, and where do we stop? is really important, because that over delivery can bring return business. It can be the thing that recommends people, but not if I'm shooting myself in the foot, right? So I have learned from online remoting that I'm a very, very generous person at heart, and I love to help people. I love to give. And it can easily become something that gets so out of hand that I'm giving to everybody else and not taking care of the income of my business. And so the journey for me has been that the generosity, the over delivering, or just reaching out to people and letting them know how I can help them was something that did help me build a reputation at first. So it had a lot of advantages, but I was battling to earn enough for myself. And the strategy that I've developed over time is to really see much more of that as a public service, a community service, but it's a small segment of what I do. So 10% of my time does go into that, but very, very strategically. So I have a membership program where people can join for free, and they can take advantage of an offering that takes an hour of my time in a month. So I have a live online session. Members of my membership program can be there. They can ask questions, but I only invest that hour into that. And then if they want more, they then have the option to book an hour with me to take things further, or book a project with me. And the other thing that I do for the community is that I belong to an association that's very relevant to what I do, because it's a part of my offerings, but it also is a place where I get exposure within a world of people who need my services. And I don't approach this to find them as clients, but rather to find them as people who see what I do for other people. And they basically all know. If they ask me if they can work with me, I generally say, I only work with a small amount of clients intensively, and other things, you'd either have to join a waiting list, or here are my packaged online offerings that don't take me work. So something like an online course, they can go take, they can do the work themselves. I get a little bit of money, but they get the tools that they need to do it themselves. And if they then need to continue and get more help, they can get it there. So my strategy for that public service is belonging to a professional association. For me, it's the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa. And I also belong to an international linked body called the Virtual Speakers Association International. And with those two, I can serve those people, but I don't put in extra work. It's a way of promoting me while serving them and helping them in that way. So I think it's come a long way to where that becomes a promotional tool, but there's a border around it.
Sita, for you, do you struggle with boundaries? So did you learn to set more boundaries, or how did boundaries feature in your development as an online remote?
I think over communicating is the best way to manage boundaries. I learned early on to talk to my client about what is billable and what is not billable.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes when a client asks me to do something and I'm approaching my weekly limit, I let them know I'm so far from my weekly limit. I can tell you this task is not going to take me that many hours. I'm going to need extra hours. I estimate X number of extra hours. Is it okay? Can I proceed? And then I proceed. They say yes. I have seldom gotten a no. What I try and do also in the beginning of my contracts is I let my client know that I'm going to need more hours than what they require me for, purely because I'm onboarding, I'm learning their system, I'm learning how they work. There's extra things to do, drawings to study, for instance, team members to get to know, work style to get to know. And once I'm on board with those things, yes, they're my hours. And I make sure that I honor that promise as well.
Cool. Okay. Michelle, do you want to say more about it? You basically opened the subject. Do you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the various kinds of boundaries, one of the boundaries I had to set was on the number of hours I can work in a week without burning out. And I went back to my kind of initial, what kind of life do I want to live? And the hours that I'd stipulated there. And then I put a limit on the hours I'm prepared to sit in front of the computer per day. And obviously that's a little bit negotiable, but I'm now very honest with clients that, it's going to take me this amount of time to do. For instance, I'm waiting for something that I edited to be proofread, but it seems it's got to go through a whole lot of processes and setting and so on. And I was honest with them that we'd have to negotiate the proofread in terms of how long that's going to take me once they've got their setting up, and they were very fine about that. I mean, one gets the impression sometimes on Upwork that everybody wants everything immediately, and I have had a client that kind of basically took me through the night, and after that I decided that's not something I'm going to do. So I'm quite clear that if they're in a tailspin, I don't give up my sleep for the sake of their deadline, and at the same time, I do deliver on the deadlines that I set.
Cool.
So it's also kind of, in a sense, a lot about knowing your own limits.
Yeah, and
You know,
the big thing is that one of the big responsibilities of freedom is that freedom or time is a very sought after commodity. And very soon, when you choose this lifestyle, the people around you realize you don't have fixed hours, which means they want to make use of that freedom because they are constrained. But you didn't become who you are now so that everybody else can make use of the time. You did it so that you can live the life that you want. So you need to not become
right.
you need to not become the one that will step in just because I've got the time. I don't have office hours. I don't blah, blah, blah. But it's really important that you realize the effort that you put in to get that freedom. It doesn't mean it's there for everybody to take and use in whichever way they want. It's your freedom. You earned it. You decide how to spend it. And that's a biggie, because it almost seems selfish to be to guard your freedom, that it's your freedom and you decide how to spend it, your time, and you decide how to spend it, and to find ways to communicate that and to make it very clear that the fact that you don't have hours and can be available at any time, that doesn't mean that you're just going to be at everybody's beck and call at any and every hour. It's not what it means. It gives you the freedom to structure your life in the way that you want to live. I want to move on and ask each one of you to give me a snapshot of a day in your life before you started with online remoting, and a snapshot in your life now. Can you do that,
So
Michelle?
is the snapshot
Yes.
before we did the course, during the
Before you
course?
started with online remoting, when you were in your previous life, and a snapshot in your life now, a day in your life. Michelle, you want to
I've got a snapshot. I've got a snapshot that might be interesting from a point of view of what makes the difference when you're doing it right. So I had the dream of online remoting, and I actually had some time that I had taken as a sabbatical. I had been planning to set up a business that would have an online component, but a strong local focus, or basically a local business with a website. I wasn't really thinking of serving people online at the time. And my day to day involved getting up really, really early, 5 a.m., doing my morning exercise and rituals and getting ready for the day. And by 7 o'clock, I was in front of my computer, designing stunning materials, building courses, making these breathtaking social media posts on every platform that there is. And everything looked so good. I'd do this from the morning to the evening. In the evening, maybe I would take an online course or do something to develop myself and go to sleep very satisfied. It was a beautiful picture. The only thing missing was revenue. Because without income, there is no business. And the difference between that and today is that what I do now is very similar, except that I don't do so much of that for myself anymore. I now do it for clients, and it's very, very diverse. I often have a few online meetings throughout the day. And I still get up early, do my things, get ready, and I love to start early. But I also enjoy the flexibility of being able to go out more. A lot of my time now is involved in public speaking, either in supporting other speakers or speaking on stage or online myself. And then in between, and this is the tricky part, I still put in some client work to help promote other clients. And my plan now is eventually to have people who will do that for me under my guidance. So it's a very, very diverse lifestyle. The part that I really like is that I can live in the countryside when I want to. I have a place where I can stay in the city when I want to and when I need to. And when I want to travel, I can do that as well. So I've had a lot of working in different places and taking the work with me. The discipline is to know when to turn the work off. So although my hours are not always, I control the hours, keeping the work out of my mind at 3 a.m. is still a discipline, a place where my brain has not found the boundary yet. And yet some of the best ideas happen at 3 a.m. So I think on balance, it's been a really empowering journey of freedom. And although I still have a lot to learn, I look back and I can go, wow, I've come a long, long way.
Cool. Thanks, Marie. Michelle, I'm back to you. Do you want to give us a snapshot, a day in your life before you started with online remoting and a day in your life now?
Okay, before, I still rise with the sun. So I get up a little late in winter, and then I put the computer on and take a kind of assessment of my day. Before, I would probably delay putting the computer on because I knew exactly what I had to do for the day. You know, it was 7 papers, and I would like wade through those 7 papers or plod through those 7 papers. What's different now is, so I get up in the morning, I feed the animals, which is horses, chickens, cats, dogs. I usually start at about 9. I have an Excel sheet, so I know more or less what I want to attend to in that day, and then I'm free to decide where my energy is at that point, whether my energy is there to kind of listen to an audio on neuroscience or edit, or, you know, because edit takes a particular kind of focus, or whether I want to write. My writing is usually done between 11 and 1 at night. But that gives me the opportunity to fix something on the shed, or scrape up the horse shit and put it in a pile, or clean the chicken hook, or and I intersperse whatever, you know, as I move from one focus to another. I then have the opportunity to have a break doing something completely different, whether it's pulling weeds for 15 minutes, or cleaning out the hook, or scraping up the horse shit, or running around with the dogs in the garden,
Okay, thank
playing
you.
tug with the rope.
Okay, so it's far more designed by you, the way you want it to be. Setu, what is it like for you? A day in your life before and a day now?
I think a day in the life before I even considered Remotania was really empty. I was now trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Who am I going to become now? Where am I headed? Started the course and kind of enveloped myself in the course content, trying to learn and trying to capture what I needed to capture. I went from a period of very busy to not busy at all. But a snapshot of my life now, post Remotania, is I really prefer clients that are in a time zone that's behind mine. It gives me space in the morning to transport kids, etc., go to the gym, which is really important to me. And then I get a head start on work so that when they wake up, it's as if there's been a machine working and wow, this is done. So it leverages me well because it also makes me look good, as if I'm highly efficient. I get to it faster than I need to. So until now, I've been working on one contract at a time. So I really could focus and give good quality work for about maybe 5 hours of the day. But I'm now at the point where I would like to have more clients and longer days.
Oh, fantastic. What all of you articulate one way or another is the joy of structuring your life around your priorities. You still do more or less the same things. You may do more interesting things now because it's more free. You're more free to choose what you want to do, but it's the joy of having the freedom to structure your life the way you want to live. For me, it's the rhythm of I'm mostly touring, mostly traveling the whole year, but then in winter for 2 months, I actually park up because I want to plug in into the grid. In summer, when I travel, I'm mostly off grid. And these are the 2 months where I do have an address. I can actually receive mail. Can you imagine that? Small things like that that become an issue if for 10 months of the years you do not have an address. So so it's the you design the rhythm, you design the structure, and you can do it. Now that freedom has another side to it. It means if you don't enjoy it, you've got yourself to blame, isn't it?
Mm.
It's just the way it is because you can design it the way you want. Okay, thank you so much. I want to ask one last question, and that is, what is your advice to somebody who's just starting out? Say to you on my screen, so go for it. What is your advice? What advice would you give?
I'd say keep an open mind. Be willing to learn and be willing to be challenged to think of reality from a completely different mindset.
Explain.
Oftentimes, I explain to people what I do, and people cannot believe that it's possible. I mean, I always say to people when we have people over for dinner or guests or whatever, my husband, it's as if I'm the party trick because he'll often say to people, "Listen to what my wife does," and then I have to explain, and then he'll be like, "No, no, no, tell them about that project. No, that project," and people cannot believe that's what I do for a living. Yesterday, I was in a panel interview for an online company that is looking for a PM. And after the interview, I was talking to family members and I was like, this client said to me, look, I really don't mind where you work. You can work in your bathroom, your toilet, the beach, Timbuktu if you want, just be productive. And she was like, I can't believe this is possible. And that a company has that mindset, not an individual company. So it's definitely different. It challenges what you think is normal and what you think is possible.
It does.
You need an open mind to get it right.
Thank you. Marie, for you?
The advice I'd give anybody who's thinking of online remoting is essentially this: know yourself. Know your purpose, what really matters to you, and what the life is that you want to live. And from there, start to put the pieces in place. It doesn't work the other way around. It really is a matter of beginning with that. And if confidence is an issue, if you wonder if you're able to do this, we've heard from the other panelists today how your confidence grows and how you actually come to a point where you can't believe that you're doing things that you thought were a pipe dream or you hadn't even thought of considering. So as you come to know yourself and really believe in that purpose more and more, it becomes easier to do what you do. It becomes easier to position what you do, and you build credibility. But it all begins with that understanding of who you really are and what you really want to do, and the strength and the deep confidence that it gives you. It's not a rah bragging confidence. It's a true understanding of the value that you do offer, and that helps things to fall into place.